And I just want to share my screen. So yes, so I'll just be sharing a bit of how my
I don't know if it's just on my side, but we lose you here and again. Yolanda, can anyone else hear her? Please let me know in the chat. She's using two screens, so the other one might actually be on with the mic. Let me just contact her. She's gonna try joining again.
Sorry about that, guys. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I think let me use this audio side then. Okay, let me try sharing again. I've never had to do this, so you can imagine how scary it is. But I was just saying that I will be sharing from my side on my experience as it came to my master's application process. I am from East London, and I am currently doing my M1 at Rhodes University. In terms of how the session is going to go, I will be doing my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But I know that at the end of the session, we will be having an opportunity to open the floor to any other questions that people might have. Okay. So this is a bit about how today is going to go. I'm going to share a bit about me, but there will be a personal experience later on. Then it's also going to be going through the scope of counseling psychology and how it is different, I guess, from the other specialities, the application process itself, things to consider in terms of academic requirements, guidelines that might be useful, and support structures that one can go or rely on. Okay, so I know this is quite a lot, but I think it's a nice simple summary of what constitutes counseling psychology, right? So it is a specialist category within the professional psychology, and you have counseling, you have clinical, you have educational. The list is endless. But we find that within counseling psychology, it promotes the personal, social, educational, and career functioning of individuals, couples, families, groups, organizations, and communities, right? And while clinical also does that, you find that with counseling, we work more with our mild to moderate severity in terms of psychological disorders, right? Whereas you may find that you may find that with clinical, they work with more severe presentation. Okay. And then it also draws on psychological assessment, diagnosis, and formulation that draw on a holistic appreciation of people's lived experiences and their socio-cultural contexts. So you find that even though you are doing counseling psychology, you still have to diagnose, which is, I think, a misconception. So you still have to diagnose, and you would obviously then have to refer clients who are presenting with more severe presentations, right? So another distinction, I think, is the setting. Counseling psychologists are more in private settings, schools. They're also in communities, right? As with clinical psychology, you'll find them in government posts, so places like hospitals, correctional services, also in private practice, and organizations as well. I think another distinction that most people like to maybe refer to is also the income difference. Because it is mostly in government positions, you find that they will earn a bit more. Whereas if you are in private or in an organizational school setting, it might not be the same. So I think that's just a very brief, simplified distinction when it comes to counseling psychology versus clinical psychology. So we're going to be looking at the application process itself. If you're anything like me, I think the hardest part when it came to applying was just starting. And I found that I was really, it was really hard to start, because I think it is a field where we are quite aware of the difficulties in getting into masters and how much of a long process it may be. So we're going to be looking at, I have compartmentalized them into 3 goals. And the first one is going to be researching different universities and their offerings, academic requirements, and lastly, the documents that you will require. Okay. If I am going fast, please do just tell me to slow down, because I do have a tendency to do so. Okay, so I think with the very first aspect, which is the vetting process, I don't see it something that we talk about a lot because of how competitive master is. It becomes a question of, why do you even have to vet or maybe have priorities in terms of which universities you want to go to? But I do think it is something important that we need to consider. And I think it's going to make a lot more sense when we talk about writing our autobiographies or motivation, right? So the question then we can ask ourselves is, how do we decide whether an institution is the right fit for us and whether we are the right fit for it? And I think there are a lot of things that you might want to consider, such as finances, emotional well-being, how the program is sort of done. And you find that some institutions, it's a 3-year program. For some, it might be a 2-year program. And yeah, just looking at what the department, I guess, itself really values and things like that. So you're going to look at the institution itself, and you're going to want to establish how the department is structured and what does that structure say about its priorities, right? Second, what makes this institution different from others, and how do we recognize those unique qualities? So I'm going to speak from my experience with Rhodes, for example. It's quite a small university. It's within the community. The department itself is even smaller, right? So you then almost expect to have a close relationship and contact with your lecturers. It is also largely community based, so there is exposure to community work in that regard. So I think those are small things that you can sort of be cognizant of and maybe look into researching about, right? And you're also going to want to reflect on you as the candidate. So in what ways do my values, my vision, and future goals align with the mission of this department, right? So my temperament, what I am most passionate about. You find that there are some institutions that don't offer certain electives, and that might be an interest of yours. So you want to go to an institution, or not maybe say go, but prioritize that application a bit more, right? And that is where the two coincide, where the individual's aspirations meets the institutional strengths. and and then you want to figure out what tends to work well and what challenges often arises, right? So even if it's like things that you find you align with the institution, and maybe strengths that you have that you find that you can sort of position yourself in a better way when it comes to writing your motivation. But also maybe if there are things that you feel like are challenges, I think it's also nice to maybe also reflect on those, or mention those in your autobiography as well. So this is just a thing to keep at the back of your mind, and maybe it is going to be a deciding factor in a lot of things when you are going through the application process itself. Okay, so next up we have our academic requirements. And I think this is something that most of us are quite privy to. You need to have an honors degree in psychology. We also have our postgrad equivalents, and it has to be from an accredited university. Because of how competitive the program is, it depends on each university, but I think a a range is 65 to 70% in your final marks. Obviously, you would not want to cap it at this. The higher your academics are, I think the better your chances are in qualifying. Not that that is the be all and end all, but it is a requirement, and I think that they are quite strict on it. And then you have the third aspect that is not an academic requirement, but I think it is an important aspect in terms of your application, and that is the experience that you have or any volunteering work. And this would be documented in a CV, where you'd want to maybe sort of show your skill set and what you have been exposed to, what you have learned, and what you're able to provide as a candidate. Okay. So this part has quite a lot of information, and I was deliberate about it because even if you're not going to catch much information from what I'm saying, maybe you're going to miss a few things. But I think in the document itself, it's always nice to go back and use it as a checklist when you are doing or you are writing your autobiography, right? And I think from a personal perspective, I had quite a lot of beef or struggle when it had to come to this part of doing the autobiography, because I felt like you never taught how to write one, but it is such an important part of the process, right? And I think the answers when you ask how to write one are quite generic, like be honest, be reflective, and you're like, yeah, but that can't be the be all and end all. There has to be something more to it, right? So I think when I had to write mine, these are some things that I considered. And that is firstly to be authentic, right? You want to share your real journey. And I think because you want this thing so much, you might fall into the temptation of wanting to sort of tell the panel what you think they want to hear. But just think of it as telling people in an informal setting, in as much as it is a professional or academic piece of writing. But this, just the heart behind it needs to be honest, it needs to be relatable, but still show the unique aspect of you as a candidate, right? You also then want to focus on reflection, as they say. So you have your CV that lists all your achievements, you have your academics, your transcripts, but now you want to show, or rather tell and narrate, how these or certain experiences have shaped you, right? How they have shaped your values, your resilience, and also why you're drawn to psychology, right? And I think when you speak about why you're drawn to psychology, you also need to show a distinction that you understand the difference in the specialities as well. Also, I think, let me say this now before I forget it. When you talk about being authentic and reflecting, right, you do want to write your life story. But I think we also need to be careful to not write things that we might not necessarily be comfortable speaking about, right? Because once you share or write things in your autobiography, When it comes to selection week and your individual interviews or with the panel, those are things that they're going to probe and ask you about. So if you feel like it's something that you're not quite really ready to talk about, I would advise to maybe keep it minimal or just withhold it entirely, because you might crack, you might be emotional, and that might also then skew the perception they have of you, depending on the type of panel you are obviously presenting or engaging with. So you also want to stay relevant. You want to keep the spotlight on experiences that connect directly to counseling psychologists, right? And I think this also speaks to a skill that you need to have. So you're not sharing everything, but it needs to have a point and a purpose within the story. And it needs to give them context as to who you are rather than you just filling the pages up, okay? Be concise and clear. Once again, the panel is going to read quite a lot of applications. So you want to then ensure that you are clear and you keep it concise, but you are careful in ensuring that your story does still stand out. Seek advice, right? And I think with an autobiography, it is a personal piece of writing. But I think in seeking advice, you get to hear other people's perspective as an outsider. And they're able maybe to show you places where you have gone wrong, maybe things that you might have expressed in a certain way that you can maybe reframe or restructure. So ask your mentors, ask your family members, your friends, supervisors, because they have experience with, some have sat on panels and things like that. So fresh eyes can catch any blind spots and strengthen your narrative in that regard. And also, lastly, you want to connect whatever narrative and story you are writing to the university's program. And I think that's why I said you want to sort of vet out the university itself. Like, what does it pride itself in? What are things that their values and their ethos, right? And so you want to position yourself in such a way where you guys align and you're able to then demonstrate that you are a fit candidate in this regard. Okay. So the next part is our referee reports. Okay. And when you pick your referees, I think this begins before the application process itself, right? You need to be aware that you need to establish and build rapport with your lecturers. And this is something that I fail dismally at, because I'm going to attend class and sit at the back of the class and leave, you know? But then you find that you don't have people who can account for you and who can speak to your ability and your strengths, right? So you also need to choose your referees specifically. You want to choose people you've worked with and people who know how to give a good account. And I think lecturers or supervisors are very strict on this, and they will reject when you do approach them if they feel like they won't do any justice to your application, because a generic good student report, it won't cut it or be enough in terms of benefiting your application. You also want to brief your referees, right? So just sending an email and saying, I was in your class 2024 and I did this, it's not enough information. Some of them might not even remember, right? So if you do know that you had a good relationship with them, also send them your CV, update them on what you have been doing, what you currently are doing, so that the details and the information that they give tailors to what you already are saying, so that there is that consistency. Okay. An important thing is respecting their time. And I think when it comes to applications, it's such a I have to be honest, like I dreaded the application process, and you can put it off for so long. But I think you also need to be cognizant that it's not just about you. There are different people that you're going to need assistance from. So respect their time, ask them early, because they are people who have their day-to-day jobs. They are lecturers. They have other people who are asking them to write a referee report, right? So asking in the last minute, it might jeopardize your opportunities of getting a report or even just getting a good enough report. And with that being said, you need to follow up. I don't know how many people I've spoken to who have said they got people, they got referees, they agreed, and they did the application or they didn't finish it, or they just didn't send it or they forgot to do it. So it is your responsibility to manage and sort of facilitate that process. So you need to remind them, but also remind them politely. This isn't their job. You're not going to give them anything in exchange for it. So I think just being also aware of how you do that is important. Diversify your perspectives as well, right? So I know in my experience, I approached my lecturer, who was also my supervisor. So she knew my sort of like development throughout the year. She knew the essays that I was writing, and how shaky they were. But she also saw how they evolved and how I developed in class, right? And also getting someone, for example, I also chose one of the other lecturers who I was working with on a service learning, so like community-based intervention. So they knew me and could account for my experience and my ethic outside of the classroom. And then also, if you someone who is working, a supervisor or your line manager who can talk to your ability and the skill set that you say you have in your CV, so that they have an overview and a well-rounded view of who you are as a candidate. And also just checking your submission rules. I think some of the things that I mentioned might seem so technical or small, but it does have a big reflection on how your application is received entirely, right? So check if the referee report is a Google form, where they have to submit it, if it needs to be submitted directly to the organization, the university, and the email address that it needs to be sent at. Like those are things that you need to be aware of, and you need to give the person that information in due time, because you find that sometimes the process happens outside of you. You're not even going to see or have access and be privy to that information. So ensure that they have everything they need to ensure that they give you a good report. And if you forgot anything, please remember just to follow up, and ensure that you you support them while they're supporting you. Yeah, this is more of the technical aspects that I was talking about, and these are the must-have documentation to ensure that you have a successful application process. And I think the heart of it and the foundation of it is to start the application process quite early to gather the necessary documents. And I'll be honest in saying that there are some applications that I did not do or submit because I found that I was quite behind and I didn't gather the enough documents, or I didn't approach the necessary people in due time, right? So things such as just being aware of time can also assist. Also, be cognizant of the requirements and the documents that you need to fill out, right? You have the application form, and in most universities, this is broken down in two different forms. The one that goes directly to the university for administrative purposes, but also the one that's going to go to the psychology department itself. And I also think sending one and not the other is going to nullify your application just overall. So you need to ensure that you do both of these application forms. Ensure that you certify your documents well in advance. Is it within the 3-month range? Do you have all the necessary documents? Because it is good and well to have an application, but if it is lacking something, it's not every university that is going to have the courtesy to come and tell you that, oh, you had a certain document missing, right? They're just going to take it as an incomplete document. And lastly, it is the academic transcripts. So I think it becomes a bit of a hassle, or it becomes harder if you are doing your honors, because by then you don't have your full academic results, but you can ask the department administrator to provide that for you. And I think that goes back to being early, right? If your department is going to be providing academic transcripts, but also progress reports for other people who are also looking to apply, you want to do that early, because I have heard about cases where you get your progress report way after the deadline, right? So I think they all have a ripple effect in terms of helping you submit your application in time, or also jeopardizing the process in and of itself entirely. And now it is the part where I speak about my personal experience. And I think I'm then going to sort of like link to a lot of the things that I noted before and give context as to why I find them important, right? So I got into counseling psychology, but that hasn't been something I've always known or had a desire to do, right? You know, some people are like from 3 years old, she knew that she wants to do this, and I didn't have that privilege, right? It's something where university is matric, you have to apply. And I applied because of being advised by people to do a humanities degree, and I did my Bachelor of Social Sciences. So in Rhodes, you have the privilege within the humanities department to just mix and match from different departments what it is you want to do. And that's where I got to do a whole lot of different things, some that I needed, some I had no business doing. But I then selected psychology, sociology, and anthropology. I know. And I think in then going to the different lectures and also having experience in volunteering, because Rhodes was a community engaged university, I then got to see that, oh, okay, maybe I am getting an idea of where my place within the helping profession could be. And I think even that came closer to the end of my undergrad, right? And that's why I have the second part, which is my undergrad versus honors experience, right? Undergrad, guys, I was just happy with my 50s, my 60s. I was not aiming high, just happy to be here, you know? And I think because of a lack of research on my side, I did not know that psychology A is a long degree, but also B, and it's quite competitive, you know, and you have to put your all, like from the get-go, and I didn't do that, right? So undergrad, I applied for my honors and I didn't get in. And I think I had gotten an offer to do my honors in social, but by then I had not known that I wouldn't go or get into my honors, so I rejected it. And that is one of the things I reflected upon in my autobiography. And I think it is certain things like that where you're able to reflect on, like receiving rejection, questioning your decision, and whether it is a path that you're meant to go through. And this is maybe struggles that some of you might also be going through, right? So I think that is something I reflected on. And so, having not gotten into my honors straight after undergrad, I was then met with the decision to find a job. And if you know anything about having an undergrad degree, majoring in psychology, your options are very limited. That against the fact that we are in Cyril's economy and unemployment is a real struggle, right? But I then got into teaching English online. And I was like, it's something I can do. But with the time that I had doing that, I sort of gained or sharpened and honed my skill set, right? Interpersonal skills, communicating, engaging with people. And I found that I was actually quite interested in hearing people's stories, right? And I know I'm here to teach you English, but I want to know more, you know? And that is also one of the things that I spoke about in my autobiography, where I sort of got that confirmation that counseling psychology is something that I want to do. And I think it's so hard when you get a rejection, whether it is honors or masters, because it's not like you can go and better your results. They're still the same. But I think in gathering volunteering experience, it does help in terms of bettering your chances, right? So it's only the following year when I applied again that I got into honors. And I think that's when I really had to put my head down and I studied and I was like, I need to keep and maintain distinction, which is something that is very new to me because I was always just okay being like here, right? And I think I'm expressing this because of how discouraging it sometimes is, because you only find out later that your marks might not be enough because of how competitive it is. But even in my experience, honors year was the year where I can say I did put in effort and I did try and do those corrections of getting to know my lecturers, getting to do volunteering work, speaking to people, doing the research, and things like that. And then after that, you'd think I went straight into masters. I was like, I need a break from school. I'm not sure if I can stick to how long the journey of psychology is and what it requires, I think, from also a mental perspective, right? And yeah, I didn't do the application. I was like, I'm just going to hope and pray that I get a job that is within the field, which I mean, what are the odds? I can say my parents were very disappointed with that decision, by the way. But I used that time to also gain experience in a lay counseling position that I, by the grace of God, got to do, right? And I got to see what therapy looks like, see what community work is, and sort of like get a bit of experience in the different, I think, capacities that counseling psychology sort of offers you in a more professional way. And that was also things that I could use. So these were detours, but I think in your autobiography, these are things that you turn and reflect on what it taught you, where you maybe questioned certain things, but how you also use that and how does that reflect your resilience and things like that. So those are just a few things that I think helped me in my journey. And also, there's that fear because you hear that, oh no, you won't get into masters at the first attempt. You won't get admitted if you don't have another degree. No, you need to have a child. No, you need to be married. There are so many things that I think people have sort of like um, attached getting into masters with. And I think it is in reason because it has been hard and there have been standards that we are not privy to, but that are there and make it hard for us to get into masters. So after my first year of working, I was like, okay, it's application season again. Let me do the first round of applications. And I'm saying this because I expected to, I'm giving myself 3 rounds of application. Hopefully, third time's a charm. By the time I apply the third time, things are going to be a bit better and I might have made it, right? And I applied. And when I applied, I had some universities that I applied to. Others, they fell through because I didn't do it well in advance. I didn't do enough research, right? So the small, just the limited prospects of university were already like cut smaller because of lack of lack of English, lack of planning on my side, right? And that is why I want to encourage us to maybe consider like small things like that that can enable us to have better options to choose from, right? So you can obviously imagine my shock when I get an invitation to selection week. I have not prepared. I did not even think that this was going to be the year that I get to even get called, right? So that's when a lot of research comes into place. And I was one of the people who was sitting on your side of the screen, coming to webinars and platforms like Pabando who open you up to information that you don't really know, and also going to people who are in the field, following them. I think now we are in a time where there's so much information. So I had to be that person who goes down that rabbit hole. To cut the long story short, I ended up getting called in and shortlisted at Rhodes and NMU, and I got selected for both Rhodes and NMU. And I think because I did that process, that vetting process, and even my application was quite solid in those two priorities, I think that's also what assisted in me getting called back and accepted in both institutions. And I think that's what I mean when I say you have to vet the universities that you are applying at. So yeah, that's a bit about me. And I think just to round off everything, to just remember to prepare well. So because I was just preparing in terms of doing the first round of the 3 rounds I thought I was going to go through for master's application, I did not apply for bursary. And that came at a big cost, right? So like I think be cognizant of certain things, and preparing well does help you to not go through things that you weren't gonna go through had you prepared well. And also prioritize self. It is a helping profession, but I think it is also one that is gonna cost you. And I think maximizing on emotional support, maximizing on your friends, your family, if you have mentors, people you can talk to, people who can guide you. Spiritual or religion can also play a factor. I know for me, that's where my relationship with God deepened. But I think also, lastly and most importantly, just the heart to try again, right? And I saw this a few days ago from a TikTok post from someone who is, I think, doing their internship this year. And they just said they were at Home Affairs, and in hindsight, this is something they had reflected upon, right? And I'm going to read it to you. It is a bit lengthy. I hope we will be good on time. But it says that sometimes applying feels like standing in the outside queue at Home Affairs, and I'm sure we've had experience with that. So you have shown up, you have prepared, you have applied, but you're still waiting to know whether you will make it inside, whether you'll be shortlisted, whether you'll be interviewed, and you hope your application will be enough. You hope your autobiography will land well. You hope there will be space for you, but then you realize the queue is long, and many are applying, many are qualified, many are passionate, and many have powerful stories. Many are hoping for the same door to open. And sometimes the outcome is not only about your application, it is also about capacity, timing, institutional needs, and a system that cannot make space for everyone in the same season. That does not mean you are not worthy. It does not mean you are not called. It does not mean you do not belong in this field. And sometimes it may simply mean come back on Monday, just like they tell you when you're at Home Affairs. And Monday may look like the next application cycle, the next opportunity to grow, and the courage to try again. So she says that that day reminded her that you cannot be selected from a queue you never joined. So to every aspiring psychologist and to everyone here, apply anyway. Apply again. Apply if you are scared, even if the queue is long, even if you have been rejected before. But most importantly, and I think this is something that I want to leave with you guys, is do your part, prepare well, write honestly, reflect deeply, ask for feedback, grow, but by all means, join the queue. Because yes, even after doing all of that, you may still be told, come back on Monday. But what if just when you think you're about to be cut off, a door opens? And what if it is your turn this time around? And so I do want to extend empathy because it is quite a tiring process. But may we still have that hope to try again. May we still have that hope to not make it be a reflection of our worth, but to understand that there are other factors, and maybe the next time around it might be your turn or opportunity. And just to leave you with a few things, I think these are just things that I could think of, or resources that are doing the Lord's work. The first one being Pabano, because I have sat down at a workshop with Papano, and I think it was with Sailing with Martha, where she prepared us with the questions that you get asked. And it really helped, you know. There are so many resources at our disposal, and I think maybe it might be helpful to just also keep in touch with what is happening in the field, even if you are waiting, even if you are applying. But yeah, thank you guys. That is me. I think I'll hand over to to you, and I can stop sharing.
You can open the floor to any questions. Anyone has a question, you can just unmute yourself and ask. Nabila, you can go.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can, but barely. But we'll try and make something out of it.
So I wanted to ask about UNISA. So I just wanted to know with the application process, um we do year modules. So how does it go about applying with like having to send through your marks if we only do exams at the end of the year?
Hi, thank you for that question. So I know with us, we also had year modules, but we were doing assessments throughout the year. So that is where your progress report would then come in. If you don't have progress report, I think you can maybe ask the administrator to assist you in how maybe other people in honors cohort were able to apply. But I'm not quite sure. I haven't heard of any person from UNISA going through that. But I think the progress report might be your best option. If not, I think asking your administrator to assist you or facilitate that for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm trying to see who was second. Zandile H. You can go.
Hi, Yolanda. I just have a question with regards to, you said you had made it into NMU and Rhodes. Is there something in particular that you feel stood out for you or that helped you stand out rather in your autobiography, like how you were able to make your paper selection quite strong?
I'm sorry, my network was buffering while you were talking. If you don't mind, can you please repeat your question?
Sure. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
Okay, yes. I was saying, do you maybe have any tips on how you were able to write a strong autobiography, or just is there something that you think stood out for you with regards to your Rhodes and NMU application?
So I think the points that I wrote or spoke to, just reflecting quite a lot and knowing that the university was quite a small, both are a bit smaller. They're also quite community based. So showing how I am aligned to the department itself in that way, showing my experiences, but also reflecting and being honest. I was also quite open in the sense that I didn't make it too formal of an autobiography. I allowed my personality, I could say, to go through. And I think that's one thing the panel spoke about, that I was able to be witty and to be humorous, but to still give them a sense that I am a trainable candidate, not necessarily perfect. So I don't think if that answers your question, but those are some of the things that I made quite an effort in. Once again, aligning yourself to the department, seeing if there are any things that you and the department itself have in common.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Theo, sorry I skipped you there. You can go next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Firstly, thank you for the informative session. I really needed this. And I just wanted to ask, in regards to the autobiography, is there a specific number of pages that we need, or do we just go as crazy as we can?
I know for each university they have their limits. I know it was, I think, for some it was 400 words, for others 3 pages. So I know they do sort of have a limit that they would give you in the instructions or information sheet. So do stick to it. But unfortunately, you can't just go crazy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but Mukua. Yeah, thanks. Please go.
Hi, Yolanda. Evening, everyone. You know what, I'm an introvert because so I want to know how best I can aim my public speaking, number one, and then can you maybe tell us a bit about the selection process for masters? Thank you.
So I'm also quite of an introvert, to be quite honest, and I think for me, putting yourself in situations where you do sort of like step out of your comfort zone has assisted me in that regard. And I think it is important when you're considering masters, because you're going to be doing a lot of presentations in front of the class. You are also going to be talking unprepared, you know. So it is something that I think I have learned to improve on. But also reflecting on the strengths of being an introvert, you know, I think that is something that I also spoke to the panel about, that I am more of a listener, and that is a strength in a teamwork or group setting. So don't just see it as something that is a deficit, but how it is also a strength. But I do think putting yourself in positions where you will be talking, if you are in a work setting, engaging little by little in conversations, in meetings. If you are in class, maybe approaching your lecturers, asking questions, speaking to your classmates, whatever it is, I think it is the small things or changes that you do that is going to benefit you. And I think with the selection process, it differs for each university. So I've only been to the NMU one and the Rhodes one. And you have your concept paper or research sort of component of it, where you have to write something which I know for roads you had to write an outline. And even then, you want to see which people or colleagues they have in the department that are doing what it is that you are interested in. So you can't maybe have an interest that is not offered at that university. Once again, aligning yourself, right? Then they had one-on-one individual sessions where you get asked questions one-on-one, and if you make it through the next round, this is roads. If you make it through the next round, you then go to the panel. And in the panel, it was a group of 5. And then you asked questions once again. I think, if I'm not mistaken, last year we had a session that was very in-depth in terms of preparing you, what type of questions you get asked. And I know even on other platforms, they do give that information. So I think it might be beneficial to also train yourself and gain that knowledge. But you then go through a series of questions with the panel. So roads didn't have a group activity, but NMU had a group activity where you have to engage in a group of 5 people, and you have to create something or bring something that you've made, or something that describes you, and you have to talk about it in a group of 5 people. And the panel then watches you from a one-way mirror or one-way room. And then after that, you have straight into panels. If you make it through the next round, you go through panel interviews. And once again, you go through the series of questions. And yeah, there is something I'm forgetting that we also had to do. I forgot. But yeah, I think those are the main things that you have to go through. I don't know if I answered your question. Maybe you can have a follow-up because it is a bit
No,
vague. Okay.
okay, no, thank you so much. No, you answered my question. Thanks. Thank you.
Yolanda, I'll read the questions in the chats for you as well. So someone said, "Hey Yolanda, I joined in a bit late. May you please repeat the documents needed?"
Are we gonna be able to send the slides to the people who joined?
Yeah, no, we definitely can. So you can share them with me and I'll share them.
Okay, then I'll just share them with you then, if that is fine.
Perfect. And then someone else in the comments said, "Could you please elaborate on the 2 selection weeks and their differences between roads and NMU?"
Okay, so with roads and NMU, they were quite similar, I won't lie. So with roads, we had 2 individual interviews. After your 2 individual interviews, you had a role play that you had to do where you were being watched behind a one-way mirror. And then if you made it through that round, you would go to the last round, which is panels, and they would inform you on the same day if you made it through, right? And then with NMU, you did that group activity. And if you made it through the next round, you would then come for a panel interview. So those are the 2 things, but they were very like small. I know some universities you have a panel of 10 people. So it was very small. And both were very nice. So they weren't intimidating. They were very nice. Even the people you role play with are very encouraging. So it's not a scary or intimidating space. It's just your nerves that might get ahead of you. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Someone else also said, "Hey Yolanda, how many universities did you apply to?"
I think I applied to 5 universities. Yes, 5. It was UWC, UCT, UP, and then it was roads and NMU. And I think another thing we don't talk about is how expensive it is to apply. So I did have to narrow it down. And yeah, I think those are the 5 that I ended up deciding on.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions? You can raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Just a follow-up question in regards to the finances. How much was it for roads? How much was the application fee for roads?
So for roads, I was already a past pupil, so I didn't have to pay. But I think it's 3. Honestly, let me just be honest and say I don't know. I really don't remember. But I don't think it was 3. 300, I think, was the maximum, and that was, I think, UP. So I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yes, someone is asking how you chose between the 2 universities you're selected for.
So between, okay, thank you. I know someone replied, Theo, and said it's 100 Rand. I nearly misled you. So choosing between roads and PE, roads, I had already known that I was offered a department bursary, so that was a huge defining factor for me. Secondly, it was a territory that I was quite familiar with, and I knew the lecturers, and so I felt that should I ever need any guidance, and also considering I'm quite introverted, I wanted somewhere that was familiar. Maybe not the best choice for my growth, but I do think that because of how masters is, and you want to consider just how you're going to integrate to a new space, I was like, let me rather go to Rhodes, an institution that I've gone through, and I from undergrad have sort of understood how they mark, how they do everything, especially within the department psychology. That's why I chose it. And also a big factor for me was the community based aspect of it. I had experienced how the community work goes and the offerings they have in that. So Rhodes ended up being my choice. Yeah.
Thank you. Someone else in the comments is saying, so volunteering is helpful for admission in a way.
Yes, it is definitely helpful because I think there are things that you learn in practice that you wouldn't necessarily learn theoretically. And I think that if you are going to be a counseling or anything, essentially a psychologist in South Africa, to have that exposure to the lived realities of many people within the communities is quite beneficial, right? And there are things that you will be confronted with that you wouldn't have known if you weren't gaining that practical experience. But even if it's not volunteering, I think even in workspace, there are skills that you gain that you can use depending on how you position it to your advantage, and that can also just show them that you are a well-rounded individual and you are then able to be trained, right? So I don't think it is the deciding factor, but I do think that it helps them or puts them at ease in knowing that you have been exposed to some things.
Great, thanks for that. Someone else is asking what your average for honors was.
My average for honors, I think it was 78, 80%. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, but I know I maintained distinctions for all of my electives and my research as well. Yeah, I think it was 78 or 80%.
Thank you. I'm gonna give it a few minutes and give others a chance if anyone still wants to ask. But in the meantime, I do also want to add that later on in the year, we do have a second set of workshops for everyone that has been shortlisted. And then we take you through the interview process, the panel interview, and the role playing and so do look out for that as the year progresses. I take it there's no additional questions. I think you did a pretty good job covering. Okay, someone asked, when applying, did you have a second choice?
No, I think you mean second choice as in like applying for clinical and applying for counseling. I think let me just establish. Yeah. So no, I had only one, and that was counseling. And I think that's something that they're also quite strict on. You need to know which category you want to specialize in. I think it also paints a picture of you knowing what it is that you want to do, and that sort of like consistency is important. Yeah, people do get like really, I can say, grilled during selection panels and things like that if they see that you applied at FITS for clinical and roads counseling, you know. So they do kind of question that a lot. So if I were to advise you, just ensure that you do have a great understanding of what it is you want to do before you apply, so that it doesn't work to your disadvantage.
Thanks for that. Someone is asking, what are my chances with the 65% in my honors year?
Honestly, I just say apply. It is up to them to take you or to not. Once again, the marks is only a third of the whatever it is they are looking for. So let it not be you who defines whether or not you are going to apply. Apply and leave the odds to be in your favor. I have no experience I can say in terms of what were people ever rejected if they didn't, or were they accepted. So I just think apply.
Thank you. I'm going to give it until 10 past. Best way to get in touch with you?
Instagram, Yolanda Ale. My LinkedIn is quite dead, but it is there. Also, Yolanda Ale. And I do want to encourage you guys to join that Master Selection Week. I think it really exposed me to what Selection Week does look like, and it prepares you. It is very uncomfortable, I won't lie. I did sit behind my camera and keep quiet, but you are forced to engage. And it really, really gives you a sense of what Selection Week does look like. So keep your eyes out on the page to get informed when it is so you can register.
I do want to mention that this is a full circle moment because I was very intentional when I chose you. I remember seeing your name come up in all of the workshops last year, and I was like, definitely. Now she's in. She definitely has to host a workshop because she's attended a few of those. So congrats. We're so proud of you.
Thank you so much also for giving us opportunities.
You're most welcome. Someone's asking, how did you get to trust people you used as a reference?
Honestly, you can only hope, guys. And I think because I chose people who were people I knew that I worked with and I engaged with on a day-to-day basis, I was able to trust that they will have something good to say about me, you know, compared to some lecturers who I never engaged with. So try by all means to engage with people um who know you, right? And I think that is something for you to sort of establish and be specific about. Yeah, because most of the time you don't even get to see what they say about you. You can only hope.
Thank you so much for that. I keep wanting to close it off, but I don't want to close people out. Let me see, because we had scheduled it until 8, so that's why I'm a bit flexible in terms of time. Let me see if anything will come in the next minute or two. And if you have questions, please just feel free to unmute yourself. You don't have to type. You can just speak. Okay, no, I think we're done for tonight. Thank you to everyone who joined us. I really, you see there it goes again. Bonso, you can go.
Hi.
Hi.
Just saying the question in my head to not, to do it properly. Hi, Yolanda. I hope you're good. Thank you so much for the presentation. What is it so far about counseling psychology that is something like what about it makes you believe or feel as though you made the best choice? Like this was the choice for you.
Okay, so firstly, I need to be honest. Like when it came to the severe disorders, I was not intrigued. Like I was more scared, like to be quite honest. And I think when I look at my clinical colleagues, it's something that interests them. They want to know what's happening. I'm just like, can I get out? You know? So I think that was quite clear on clinical is not for me. Counseling, I really enjoy community work. And I think I enjoy also just the flexibility that it gives you. You can be in a therapy space, you can be at a school setting, you can be in community as well. So I just think that because I always wanted to be in a helping profession, I didn't have the brains of a doctor. But I think I used what I knew were my strengths, like being a listener, compassionate, and things like that. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe counseling psychology is the best fit. And also volunteering, I found that, oh, okay, I do want to work with people a lot. So counseling psychology, I think, came up for me quite a lot. Because, yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Balisa's asking if it would be a problem if they've done their undergrad at 2 different institutions.
Not at all. It is not a problem. I think just it's just your marks and your CV. So whether it was, I know many people who have done their undergrad somewhere else and then now they're doing the postgrad and even their masters at different universities. So that doesn't put you at a disadvantage at all. Just ensure that you maintain a good academic standard wherever you are.
Thank you.
Question.
Someone is asking, can we use our mentors as our referee?
So once again, when you use a mentor, I know some universities are quite strict in terms of who they allow to speak on your behalf. So they will say they want academic referees, right? So that would be your lecturers, your supervisors. And then also if it is at work, you'd need someone who is a manager. So it does limit you in terms of people who can talk about you. So I've never heard someone say they use their mentor. I would assume that maybe because if your mentor is then someone who is in the profession or the field, maybe that would be a different story. But if it is like me, I don't think they would take my word for it compared to a lecturer, a supervisor, someone in the field who knows what it is that they are looking for.
Thanks for that. Someone's saying, I'm not sure if this was discussed. Can I kindly ask if, okay, no, we definitely are recording the session and we will be uploading it onto our YouTube channel. In case you missed the first workshop we had for clinical psychology, that's also already been uploaded on there. You're welcome. I think that brings us to a close. I don't want to keep anyone hostage, but thank you once again to everyone that joined. If you have any more questions, you can connect with us on our social media platforms. You can connect with Yolanda as well. She's given you her social media handles. And yeah, all the best. We're rooting for you, and we're hoping we can see all of you guys in the second set of workshops because you have been shortlisted. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you to you, Yolanda. I forgot to thank you personally.
Thank you.